I'm an addict called Reno. And I'm going to sit down. I'm not really a stander. Without a podium to hide behind, I might feel a little bit naked. So
Just do it, Reno.
just do it. So I'd like to say that it is a really good day to be clean, and I really would like to start the meeting by getting 30 seconds of reflecting like what it was like those last days before you got here. Whether you got 30 years or whether you're just coming in here, like those last days. And I just gotta like get with the guy of my understanding about that for a second. Thank you. That was really more for me than anything else. But it's a good day to be clean, right? And I live in Mount Holly, New Jersey, which is 20 miles east of Philadelphia. I grew up, I'm a Philly boy. And you know, a couple things I want to say before I really get going into my story is I want to thank Barry G and Annette for like picking us up at the airport and putting us up, and I want to thank Bill for sharing this morning, and like just the whole Narcotics Anonymous community that like in the last like 36 hours I got to meet have just made me feel like such a part of. And I suffered from a disease that even with a clean date of 11/23/05, it wants me separate from you. And it will tell me that I'm not good enough, that I haven't done enough H&I work as like some of the members in here. It'll tell me all kinds of stuff in my own voice, and I will often refer to it as the committee, because much like area service, like someone will make a motion in my head, it'll get seconded, there'll be discussion, the person that doesn't want it will get beat up and taken out the door, and then all this like stuff will go on, and I'll end up with this madness, like the disease of addiction talking to me in my head. And the only antidote that I have ever found has been another recovering addict. And my clean date is 11/23/05, and I did get clean in the penitentiary, and I'm not a first-time winner at Narcotics Anonymous. I don't know if I really won anything, but I've been given the gift of life. It was like breathed into me, and I was prayed in here, and I had a life like I have a life that's worth living today, and I did not get given a life back because I never had a life before Narcotics Anonymous gave me a life. I also want to thank, you know, like Mark and some of the people that came from the east side of Florida, and I want to thank, you know, I just want to thank you guys because I haven't felt this much a part of in a long time. I almost was in tears up here listening to these guys, you know, because, you know, we all went through a war, man, and like, you know, like veterans, and if there's any veterans in the room, no disrespect, you know, they have the like places where they go, and the reason they have those places is because they've been through something together, and they have a way of coping with that because they get together. And that's what we do here. See, it doesn't matter what you use, where you came from, what your color, your creed, race, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic background. What matters is what do you want to do about your problem and how can we help? And the thing about it is we all had the same thing inside, right? We all suffered from the same feelings inside, and we like just had to get outside and away from ourselves. And it's not always easy, even with some clean time and what I like to think is a little bit of recovery, to have to continue to live life on life's terms. It takes courage. It takes perseverance. It's not for the faint of heart around here. And if you're not willing to get involved in service and do some work, you know, you're on a hard road. Because on the days when I don't feel like I belong to Narcotics Anonymous belongs to me. And it comes back in reciprocity. Like what I've put into my recovery program pulls me back in. It's like an ebb and flow. It's like a universal law that you can't stop. If you're putting work into it, when it starts to get hard, it's going to come back to you. And I've really experienced that. And I love my wife, Debbie. We have the same clean date. She has a few more days than me, and we go to this one convention every year, and she always gets the mug. And you know, that's another conversation. So look, I want to talk about being an addict. Like my father was an addict that used to smoke weed, and I'm going to talk a little bit about like what it was like for me. He used to smoke weed and put me to sleep when I was an infant, and I watched him like get high. And as I was growing up, like we actually lived in Fort Lauderdale at one point, and I remember stealing his syringes and putting water into chameleons. Like, and I know that seems like some serial killer stuff, but I was a little kid that was watching an addict use, and I was learning behaviors that were going to wreck my life for years, that were going to put me in comas, in penitentiaries, in dire straits on the streets. And at the age of 10 in the streets of Philadelphia, I was a daily using addict. I was an intravenous addict at 11. I entered my first facility at 13, and I went on tour with a rock band at 15. That sounds prestigious, but it's not. See, the one problem I had was the disease of addiction. And wherever I went, and like even though I lived in Aspen for 5 years in my teenage years, and like, you know, like what sounds like some type of like really wonderful existence, the disease was with me. And you take this Kensington boy from North Philly with a whole bunch of drugs in him for years and put him in the jet set area like Aspen, a lot of people got robbed. That's all I'm going to say. They didn't see me coming. And I was like, you know, I might have been high, but I still was smart enough from the streets to know when to get out, you know? So I didn't get a bit out of that one. But, you know, the progression of the disease was horrific, and I ended up with a woman I was with for 10 years, and I watched her die in my arms from an overdose. And my daughter was 3.5. And I'm going to tell you that the fights in the penitentiary, getting shot at on the streets, all the things that we go through out there in active addiction, not one of those things was as hard as telling my 3.5-year-old daughter that her mother was not coming back. That's the fatal nature of what happens around here. This is what we fight. Marla, who OD'd and died in my arms, had a father who was an undercover narcotics officer for 20 years in the state of Pennsylvania. And he wasn't very happy that his daughter overdosed in my presence. And at the time of her overdose, my father was incarcerated on State Road in a county prison, one of 5 in Philadelphia, in a row, on a road. And a month later was found beat to a pulp and hanging from a light in his cell. Whacked by the corrections officers, paid by my father-in-law. So in Narcotics Anonymous, we talk about living with spiritual principles, right? And like we have to live in recovery with principles, the disease needs things to live too. And that summer created enough self-hatred, self-loathing, fear of the unknown, and all of those things that it needed to feed itself to have me in a position where every time I used a specific combination of substances, I would buckle to my knees and be this close to dying. And as soon as I would come out of the crunched hands, I would do it again. And I lived to use and I used to live, but I wanted to die at the end. And I tried various ways to just take myself out. I'm an addict that was brought back 4 times, and I'm an addict that was in a coma another time for 5 days. When I woke up from the coma, I started pulling the tubes out because I had to go cop. When I say that to a professional throughout the years of my incarcerations and in different facilities, they shake their heads at me like, how could you do that? How could you have done the same heroin at Marla's funeral that killed her? How could you do that? How could you leave your daughter in the car while you get out the cop and you know that it's about to get raided and you're taking the chance anyway? How can you like give her toy and still do the things you had to do in the front seat in order for you to drive so you would stop throwing up and stop defecating in the car and those, like I'm talking about the nasty, nasty parts of the disease of addiction. I came into the rooms in 2001 and I didn't stay, but something happened in 113 days of me being around Narcotics Anonymous, and what that was I see somebody said it up here, like we listen, we're very observant people, we addicts. And like a lot of us have came from an environment and situations where our very life depended upon being observant. And I watched people in Narcotics Anonymous, and something happened where like they copped where I copped, they used like the places I used and how I used and various ways that I used, and they did the various crimes that I used, but they weren't using. And there was something striking about that to me. And even though I had heard like Narcotics Anonymous and other fellowships, and you know, like when we talk about you cannot graft an open mind, a new idea on a closed mind, I never even heard the message of Narcotics Anonymous. I was not willing. And after taking my own will back, of course the money ran out again. You know, the money always seemed to run out. I don't know, like, and it didn't matter. Like I was talking about some war stories, like, you know, like the money would just run out. And the more I had, the faster it seemed to went. I couldn't believe it. And then, you know, my bright idea this time, like Halloween Day 2003, was to like go to the methadone, get up, go to the methadone clinic, go to Camden, New Jersey and cop, go back to where I was being allowed to stay, and then write a note and walk into a financial institution and take a withdrawal. That was my best thinking. It was Halloween. Other people had masks on. I figured I could wear a mask, walk in there, get the bag of money, get out of the financial institution, and go cop. That was my best thinking. And it worked. I got away for a few days. I was involved in some other criminal activity at the time, and when they started following me for the bank, I was like, man, I don't know, they're following me for this, but I got away with the bank robbery. That might actually be, I should probably go back to doing that because I must have got away with that. Now this is how delusional my thinking was. I mean, I'm talking about delusioned thinking, where the detectives are driving around behind me. I'm busting scripts every 2 hours on the dot. And like I think they're after me for the scripts that I'm writing, and here, and I didn't get indicted for that. I'm glad we're in another state. But like, I did not even think that it was for the bank. I've been rescued many times by the police. And I really got rescued this time because when I went into prison, I did not stop using. Before the bank robbery, I ran up at some drug dealers' houses in Philadelphia, and I started to catch my first bids. And I remember going to the prison before I had done any bid, and I remember picking up my father's belongings in a milk crate. And I remember walking up to the prison, and I remember the construction zone on the right of the prison, because there was something, like even through the drugs in my life, I would experience things that would like have some type of transformational effect on me, where I couldn't stop looking at the construction site. Like something was, I was going there and I was focused to get my father's belongings, but something was like just look over there, Reno. Look at that. I don't know why it was making me do it. Whatever it was. But it was the prison they were building. And it was the prison they were going to house me in twice. And they also housed me on the same block my father was murdered on twice. And I also shot dope on that block every day. Thank God for the bank robbery. Because I got put in position of having like some Narcotics Anonymous messages going off in my head, right? And I got put in a position of being tired of using, and I was in a penitentiary, and I was just, I got the gift. I woke up one day and I just knew. I just knew I didn't have to use anymore. And I'm talking about getting free from the prison in my head that I lived in since I was a little kid, shooting up chameleons with water in Fort Lauderdale. And now I'm in my mid-30s and I'm in a penitentiary and I'm walking around in state prison clothes free. And I got clean. And I had like 118 days with you guys, and I would like during the time I was still using, I would go to these other fellowship meetings, and I would go in there to get off the block. I would get, sometimes I would go there to cop, you know, and but like there was no identification there for me. I don't know why. I appreciate what they did for us to grow, making a model that we could grow upon, but it wasn't for me. And I took this little envelope that had an address of this spiritual bookstore, and I wrote a letter there. And I mentioned the name of this guy. And I know that people in that store, and I go there and I buy medallions and I buy various things for people when they celebrate their anniversaries. And I mailed that letter to that store, and the following day that guy walked in that store and wrote me back. And now I had a lifeline to Narcotics Anonymous through the mail from behind the wall. And I was writing these letters, and I started to get a couple more addresses, and I was writing members that were still clean. I had met you guys and you were still clean. And now you were actually willing to, like, I appreciate today the amount of time it takes to sit down and write someone a letter, because life gets busy. And when you have commitments to keep and a job and financial responsibilities and all these things, and sponsees blowing up your phone, sponsees dying, funerals to go to, all these things that we get in here, I know what it's like today, because like those letters, it took something for somebody to stop their day and sit down and write me a letter. And I was resentful towards H&I. I was resentful because there were no Narcotics Anonymous meetings in this prison. Now, just because I was clean a few days, and I still can be angry and resentful today, I need to be real careful how I tread with my defects on a daily basis. So I got a letter from an NA member that said, you know what, that's enough of the... I'm not going to say that. That's enough. That's enough of that. Why don't you get in service? Why don't you do something for your own recovery while you are in prison? Why don't you take some action on your own? So my cellie at the time had 29 years, and he had one of those word processors. Now, you can't have computers, but you can have these word processors in the state prisons in New Jersey. And he was one of these guys that would, if you wrote him up for something and you were a corrections officer, you got sued. He was filing a case, and he was sending it, and he was taking it to the appellate division because he didn't have anything else to do. And he was smart. He was smart, and I'm telling you, even if it was just to get the cop to go to court, like, and, you know, and they hated him, but there was nothing they could do. So he helped me write a proposal to the administration of this state prison to start a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And I remember the letter I got from Joey C., you know, who told me that you need to get in service and you need to do some stuff for yourself. And I'm emotional because Joey was a guy that when he was in, he was in. But he didn't always stay in. And 3 summers ago, his wife and daughter walked in, found him at the kitchen table. The fatal nature of what we deal with. And I got to work. Like we have an express. I got on my bike, so to speak, and I wrote World. I wrote the North New Jersey region. I wrote the New Jersey region. I wrote the area service close to there. I started getting books that were coming in. Wait, let me rephrase that. Because all I did really was walk into the financial institution. That's the only thing, the only action I really took to get me in a position poised to start to help some people with what we talk about, which is a message of hope. The administration approved the meeting, and we began a meeting in the prison. We joined the area through the mail. H&I was banned in the prison, by the way. That's a whole other meeting. So there was all this uproar. Now look, I'm a dope fiend, right? So I'm writing letters to the area, but I'm also writing letters to members to hear if the letter got read, what did they say, who's on my side, you know. Look, come on, some of you do that, man, come on. You know, how many votes could I get? Can we actually get this passed if I write the motion? You know, like all this kind of stuff. And like some of the members that fought for me in area service while I was behind the wall, some of them said, if this body does not send this literature, I will pay for it out of my pocket and never come back here. There were things like that being said. There were members of Narcotics Anonymous fighting for me on the outside to recover on the inside. I had to go on interferon that year. It was my 2nd year clean, and I was behind the wall, and I went through 48 weeks of that. And there was a guy on my block who had 2 older brothers who died from cirrhosis behind the wall, who had filed some lawsuits for us in New Jersey to be able to get medical treatment for Hep C. And he stayed on me, man. We did this for you. We filed these lawsuits so you could get better. My brothers died for you to have this treatment. Now, I don't believe that someone has to die for me to get well. But he was adamant, and I took his suggestions, and I'm still, you know, non-reactive to Hep C today from that. So, you know, fast forward, man, I got my status, which is when you get to be able to go outside and work, you know, put the carrot suit on, and I was able to go outside, and now I'm winding down my 3rd prison bid, and I got 3+ years clean, and I worked some steps. I found a guy in the prison that was like going over step work with me, and like I'm finding freedom, right? And something happened, right? This guy from Rahway came. And I want to give a shout out to Shoebox too. Now, I didn't know Shoebox, but I have learned about him in the last 24 hours. And what I learned about him is part of what my story is. Because an inmate from Rahway brought cassette tapes of NA speakers. And I'm in the prison yard every day with my clear Walkman, trying to like read my basic text, when the people that I ran with on the streets and behind the walls are coming up to me saying, "Yo, we got this guard moving for us. We got a package coming in tomorrow." And I had to stay in my book, and I had to stay with my headphones on, because the disease was all around me inside there. So I started listening to these tapes that this guy brought from Rahway to Riverfront, where I was. And one of them was Dutch H. And one of them was Ronnie G from Southern California. And there were some other guys from California. I had a Pepe, I had a Usman. I had these speakers, like I had like 9 speaker tapes, and they were like gold to me in there. Now my celly had a dual cassette because he was grandfathered in. He had a lot of time in. And I started copying them, and you know, I was like this little distributor in the prison, you know. Oh, you want to come to the meeting that we started? Yeah, look man, take this back to your cell and you know, get with some Dutch 8s and you know, get with some Ronnie G, man. You're gonna get something out of this message. And then occasionally we would like put one of the tapes on and the cop would let us play it. So we had like a makeshift speaker in the prison. And I came home with 3+ years clean and 3 years parole to do. I had altogether 7.5 years behind the walls in 17 different county and state facilities in 2 states. My longest address was Riverfront Prison, 33 months. That's how much I ran and stayed on the go. I was talking to somebody before the meeting about that. And I came home and I hit the ground running, man, because like my life depended on it. Not like because somebody told me that, because like my life depended on me hitting the ground running in Narcotics Anonymous. I made 118 meetings in the first 90 days I was home. I shared at every meeting. People were sick of hearing me. After 90 days, there might have been a couple that were like, yeah, keep going. But you know, in the back, they were going, oh my God, not him again. All this prison shit and, you know, behind the wall and the sharp and spoon shit. And, you know what? Come on, man. But like I knew my life depended on it. And I started to build a network. And I ended up with a sponsor for a little while who was from New York, who had done some state prison time in upstate New York. And he did something for me. He did something for me that I do to the people that I get involved with today. Because I have been told I don't get to choose who I help. He took me to conventions. I had to go in the state parole office and I had to get a pass to go out of state. I didn't think this shit was possible. He's like, yeah, you're going to go in there and you're going to ask them and tell them you're going to Vermont. I was like, you're crazy, man. I just came home. They ain't going to let me go nowhere. He said, look, man, march your ass in there just like you marched in the bank. And like, you know, and be real, look, and be real polite and nice to them, you know, and ask for a pass. And they were hesitant at first, but all of a sudden, the first year I'm home, I hit 9 conventions. I had no money. I didn't have no job. I had no car. I lived in a recovery house that I like would get one day, like 1 day of work a week just to pay my rent. Felt like a piece of shit because they kept paying for me. They kept telling me, get in the truck, shut up, don't touch nothing, right? Just get in the truck, don't say nothing, don't touch nothing in the back seat, don't be rooting around for nothing, just come into the convention and have a good time. I would go out to eat and I didn't want to go because I couldn't pay. Shut up, get in the truck, go into the diner. And I got that for months and months and months. Then, like, I asked people, what do I got to do to get my license? They said, well, obviously, you need to go to, like, 9 different courtrooms. I did that. I paid the fines off. I had about $8,000 in fines when I came out of the prison. I had 3 years of state parole to work off. I didn't know how I was going to do anything. I knew how to navigate now behind the wall clean, but I did not know how to live out here with you. I robbed, I stole, I cheated. I took stuff from everybody that I came across from, especially the ones that loved me. If they loved me, they were getting hit. To the point where once they knew they were hit, they stopped letting me come around. I was lonely, man. I was desperate. I was sad. I didn't know there was another way. I had this one meeting I would go to every week, and I would put my hand up and I'd sit in the front and I'd say, yeah, I still haven't got a job. I put applications in, and home invasions, bank robbery, people don't really want to hire me. I got a week's work this week doing blah, 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 and I paid my rent and life is good. And finally I had an NA member walk up to me and say, look, man, I own a gas station. Why don't you come next week and start pumping gas? See, you get paid to pump gas in New Jersey. Now, I don't know if he really needed somebody to pump gas or if he really was sick of me coming into his home and sharing that shit about not having a job. But he's one of my best friends today, man. I worked at that gas station for 8.5 hours like I own that gas station. People were handing me money. I'm telling you, my mind says when somebody has a 2-carat diamond on their finger and they pull up and I walk up and say, can I help you? My mind says, cut off her finger, hock the diamond, go use. So I had to deal with being outside in the world and learning how to work and learning how to navigate myself. And like after a little while, I took the lawnmower from the recovery house and I started going. After 8.5 hours of pumping gas, I would go cut lawns. And I remember this one recovery house, it was a girl's house, and I haven't met yet Debbie. I wasn't with Debbie yet. And I want to clarify that. So the girls would laugh at me. They'd be on the porch smoking, and I would be pushing this big field with the lawnmower in the back of my station wagon. And I would say to myself, right, here's where you guys came in my head, right? The committee was like, screw this, man. Screw that pumping the gas. Don't go cut no lawn. You don't even have to go to parole to report anymore, because we're going to use. You know what you are. You know what it's like for us. They're not like you. These are the conversations the disease would have with me. The motion to go use. I second that. Then the discussion comes up, Man, those early days of recovery, man, are hard. They're really hard, man. That's why I try to stay with newcomers in my pockets, because it's easy with like a little business that I built and all that, right? I got a little business today. The last few years I've been, like, I got a rider. I sit on that like a boss. I paid for that shit. I paid it off. I worked like a farm animal to own what I own. It's not about that, but everything I did in that came from you. I didn't really have that in me to do that. You people instilled that in me. You made me keep coming back. You told me to get in the truck, shut up, and no, you're socially awkward, you have prison face, and you always have to sit with your back so nobody can stab you. I heard that in the meeting this morning. Oh my God, I almost started crying when that guy said that, because I trust y'all, but I feel better up here. I know what's behind me, the wall. So I came home and I got a home group, and I got in service, and I started going to H&I, and I felt my heart was there, man. I took a commitment in a hospital. I had a detox where I had been revived, so I was now going into a detox where they had brought me back to life, and and I did that for a year, and then I had a year where I was going into this real gritty, I call it one of the gritty rehabs we have in our area, because you state funding, you don't get if you got private insurance, you don't go there. Usually when I go there, there's a few people I know. That's I just like it there. And then I took another commitment for about a year, and I would go to area. I was so grateful to be home. I was so grateful to be a part of Narcotics Anonymous. I would go to area and I would just go in the back and bag literature. I didn't have no position. People would come back and be like, oh, what's your position? I'm like, I just bag literature. I'm just here to help. I'm here because you guys gave me, like, I don't have to get up and go cop. That's the bottom line. I'll bag literature all week if you're going to free me from that. And something happened where Barry actually gave me the information to get into the prisons. And I got denied. I was crushed. I was angry and resentful again. Somebody also this morning was talking about systems. Oh man. Anything that resembles a system where somebody's going to tell me how it has to go is rough for me. So my initial response to anything like that is, screw it, I don't need that anyway. Right? The disease, the committee will say, you don't have to do all that, man. You ain't got to go in no prisons to stay clean. Just don't worry about all that. As a matter of fact, you don't even need an H&I commitment anymore. Remember how resentful you were in prison when we started those meetings? Remember that, Reno? Let's feel that way about H&I again. When I started my company, I was doing it like illegally. I wasn't paying taxes. So I applied for a contractor's license. I got denied. Due to the nature and amount of your convictions, we cannot give you a contractor's license in the state of New Jersey. But you guys said you need to appeal. You need to stop being so, stop having the reactions you have. I appealed it. I got a contractor's license. I LLC'd my company. I insured it. I registered it with the state. The state that housed me for all those years. So, last summer someone walked into a meeting I was sharing at in Willingboro, New Jersey, and they walked up to me and they didn't know I was going to be there, and they handed me an application again for the statewide clearance in New Jersey. And I got cleared. And I went up to Trenton. And I got my badge. They gave me a badge. They gave me a badge, did you hear me? And the badge allowed me to go into all 13 state prisons in New Jersey. And I gotta tell you guys got it going on down here. Our H&I subcommittee has about 10 people in it. The other area that I belonged to when I had the hospital commitment and the gritty rehab commitment, they get about 25 people there. And we're always scrambling to fill our commitments. Y'all are blessed, man, to have this much willingness. And I want to share that with you because even though we're a large area, the one area has like 60 home groups. And only 20, 25 people show up at H&I. So I got cleared, and so I just got to back up for a minute because, and I know I'm probably going to be holding you hostage soon. Don't send any charges my way. I'm off parole. I'm not trying to do anything. So I'm on parole, and I got this one guy. He's an H&I soldier. He just celebrated 20 years. Mike McKay. I'll just blow his anonymity. I don't care. He's a great dude, man. And he took me into the state prison. I was on parole still. I loved it. Look, when this one said over here, yeah, he gave me my number, I was like, oh, don't say that in the mic. So this guy takes me into the state prison. I'm like, Mike, I'm on state parole. I'm only home 6 months. He's like, get in the truck, shut up, don't touch nothing. You got your state ID. Just walk into the prison with me. I walk into the prison, still on state parole. I'm like, man, this isn't going to be good. They take my ID. I walk into center, and I'm going back to share, to set up the meeting where the inmates are going to come in. And I'm going back, and right at center, there's 3 corrections officers. And all 3 of them spin their heads and look at me and go, "Are you doing here?" Oh, that felt good, man. They couldn't search my cell that day. I did that about 5 times while I was still on parole. So we're now trying to, we only have, out of 13 prisons, there's only like 3 that have commitments with Narcotics Anonymous meetings going into them. My co-chair of the prison commitment that I recently took is trying, like, we're trying to like really generate some willingness to get, you know, people cleared to go into the prison so we can open up more meetings. And we're like, you know, there's some like discussions because like one area holds the prison commitment in their area, and then, you know, another area doesn't want you to go into their prison, but they're not filling the commitment. And then there's just all this madness going on. So we're trying to get some type of statewide, you know, like some workable type of clearance and one point of accountability for people to get cleared for the state prison system. The commitment I hold, every Thursday I go in, is at the last state prison I was housed. And I was clean in there, and I was finishing my interferon, and I used to come in there in my khakis, in my state prison boots, and I used to come in there with my basic text, and I used to sit in the front row, and I would hear these members come in, and now I sit on the other side. So in that first year when I was going to conventions, I went to Almost Heaven area. What an awesome convention in West Virginia. And I went there a couple years in a row, and the second year I was there, I sit on the lawn, I got my little lawn chair. I didn't steal it, I paid for it. And I start to hear the main speaker, and it's Ronnie G. I'd listened to his tape like 180 times behind the wall. I would never forget that voice. And he got done sharing, and I ran up to him afterwards, and I waited for everybody else that was waiting to hug him, and I said, I'm Reno, and I had a cassette of you when I was behind the wall. And he broke down crying. He said, I wasn't going to keep the commitment here. My uncle just died. I had already committed to coming here, and the service was this weekend. And I wanted to go to the service, and I didn't know why I was supposed to be here. But he said, now I know. I got to talk to Ronnie last night, driving in Barry's car. I got to meet Dutch. We shared prison stories, you know, prison robbing, bank robbing stories. We didn't really talk about all that much recovery, but there was a lot of there was a lot of war stories going on. I love y'all. Y'all saved my life, man. Y'all gave me a life I never thought I could have. And somebody said it earlier. Not only did I think I was going to have a needle in my neck when I checked out, I thought I was going to be in a prison cell. We just bought a house. And last fall, I have an NA member who I sponsored her son, and her son had passed away from a freak accident. And she's one of our success stories, man. She is like 112 arrests in Memphis, grew up in Memphis, did time in the penitentiary, and she now works in treatment and has a master's degree. Right? They don't come more hardcore than her. And last year they created this new position where she works, and she said, I don't usually do this. they created this new position, and everything they're saying that the people in this position are going to do, you do. You take guys to lineups, you take them to court dates, you pick them up in prison when they get out, take them to rehab when they relapse. You do all the things that are like part of this job description. So I started the process with some high mileage on my knees and cutting 50 lawns a week. I wrecked myself because I will chase money too, don't get it twisted. And I went all through this process of getting interviewed and vetted and all this, and I was like, but what about like you know, in the back, look, the committee said they are not going to hire you. And I'm going to be working with people that had open DIFUS cases. So I won't be working with children, but I'm going to be working in some people that are like addicts that like their kids were taken. I go through 2 months of the vetting and all of this stuff, and they run your background at the end. I know, ain't that some shit, man? Like, why'd they do that? Don't they know what they put the committee? The committee had a lot of work to do because of that. Overtime. And last week I got cleared. Now this week I started and I worked there 3 days and I'm in the belly of the beast. It's in Camden. People are dropping like flies on the street up there. Yeah, I know, here too. And like they gotta like buzz me in and they lock me in this office and they sat me in the middle of these 5 ladies in this office and they haven't even developed what I'm gonna do and there's nowhere for me to work and I'm like sitting, I felt like, you know when people draw the naked guy in the art class? That's what I felt like. All week. And then they took me out on a transport. Now I'm in the hood. I'm in North Camden. I'm like, yeah, this is what it's hitting for. Let's go pick this addict up, right? Then they said, look, you haven't been trained properly. I'm like, what? 7.5 years behind prison, 28 years using. I copped in every city across the country. What do you mean I'm not trained? So now I gotta surrender to do things their way and get trained. I don't know if it's going to work out, right? But I do know, my sponsor told me, and Barry said the same thing to me, like, you've been put in a position where you don't even know what's going to happen for you. Because really, you weren't supposed to get that job cleared like that. Now, I know, somebody said earlier, yes you were, you know you were. But see, the committee don't want me believing any of that. And I just can't, it was like, I was in a minute by minute, stay in the moment, and try to learn what they're doing in this office all week long. I don't know what, my just for today reading is God's will. Somebody mentioned that this morning. And I believe it's not God's will for me to cut 50 lawns a week. I might have to cut 10 just to make my ends meet. But I'm like on another path, man. And look, I'm committed to the guys in that state prison. And I go in there, my co-chair, like we go in with 2. So if we don't have a speaker, we still go in and we read an IP. We still bring a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous into them. And my co-chair, his story's not prison. And to be an H&I member that goes into prison, your story doesn't have to be prison.
That's right.
But I love those guys because I know, like the veterans know what it's like to get shot at in war. I know what they're going to be hitting for when they come home. They got another thing to overcome. They got to learn that the committee is going to tell them not to do it. To go back to selling drugs, to go back to how it was before they went away. It'll be different this time. I won't get caught. Maybe I'll get away with the bag. I will go to the wall for those guys. And if you don't know what that expression means, that means that if you get surrounded in prison and you got to fight your way out, you put your back to the wall and you fight your way out. And everybody in here that's recovering today went to the wall against the disease of addiction. We are all miracles in here today. My wife's upbringing and her childhood, her socioeconomic background, the drugs she used, everything about her life until we met was completely opposite of mine. We both have the disease of addiction. There is no stronger common thread than that. She has taught me more about myself. Oh man, I almost didn't want to say it, man, you know? But I've learned so much about myself through her. And a lot of times I think, man, she works a lot better program than me. You know, I don't know. I still get real reactive, you know? A week ago, I went into a state prison in Yardville on a Wednesday night and I shared. On Thursday night, I kept my commitment. On Friday night, I went to a place called Self-Help, which is a DOC release place. It's a halfway house in Philly. And it's really like unbelievable that I was like giving up on H&I and the floodgates opened last fall. I can't believe it. And I heard it earlier that somebody like stopped going and like I was discouraged, man, and like I can't, like now I'm like, man, can I get a night off from the prison? Like can I rest a little bit? You know, let me rejuice a little, you know? But I'm so grateful, man, to go in there and like be able to share with those guys a message of Narcotics Anonymous that there's another way to live, man. There's another way to live, and we're here for you. We're not forgetting you. We love you. And I tell them that, and they look at me a little sideways, and look, I gotta tell you that I feel more at home in that state prison bringing a meeting in than I do in that office. There's no doubt about that. And I even shared that. Like, these guys are asking me, like, yo, did you get the job? This is a program of relationships. And just because somebody did some things to get behind the wall, we gotta love them too, man. Like, to me, they're all members of Narcotics Anonymous, because they show up in that prison every week. What they do when they come home or when they get transferred or whatever, like that's on them. That's not my responsibility. That's not my job. My job is to carry our message to them behind the wall. I sit at that panel every week and I look at this one pillar. I sat across from my mom in that visit room. My last week of interferon. What a gift. You guys gave her son back. You guys gave my 3.5-year-old motherless daughter her father back. You guys turned me into somebody that when there's problems in my family, I'm the one who's got the level head. I just told you about the committee. That doesn't seem to match up. Somebody said it to me earlier, man. Like what you think about yourself doesn't match with your reality because you've done all this footwork to make this awesome life. And your relationship, my relationship with myself, is 28 years of using with that guy. I got 12 years of this, and it just doesn't seem to match. We got a member who says, I get the opportunity to live 2 lifetimes in 1 lifetime. Oh, man. Look, most of the stuff I say came from somebody else. I will just say that. But look, man, 2 lifetimes in 1 lifetime. I was that robbing, stealing, cheating, conning, dope fiending guy who destroyed everything in its wake. And I still have him, he's up on the committee, he's in the back. They don't let him talk much. He tries to come out all the time. Look, man, I'm gonna finish up with this, right? Shoebox, man. Yeah, it's almost over, sweetie. I loved Shoebox, but I didn't know him. I didn't have to know him. You knew him. Shoebox is one of my predecessors. It doesn't matter if I had a personal relationship with him. It doesn't matter. You guys opened up a pathway all the way back to Southern California, New York, and Philly, where all those guys in the beginning believed in the message of Narcotics Anonymous. You guys gave me this. How could I not give it back to somebody? That would be stealing. I don't steal anymore. Thanks for letting me share.